Welcome to Everything Casual, bringing you original football casual videos from the golden era of the 80s and 90s, right up to current day. Football away day stories and historic clashes between football firms. Subscribe so you don't miss out. We upload videos every week.
May 2nd, 1992. Leicester City against Newcastle United. One club chasing promotion to the First Division. The other staring into the abyss of relegation to the Third Division for the first time in their history. By the end of the afternoon, the referee would take the players off the pitch. Supporters would invade the field. Seats and coins would be thrown into packed terraces. Police vans would be filled with fans. Front doors would be kicked in during dawn raids. And people who were there would still be talking about it more than 30 years later. Yet strangely, despite all of this, many who lived through the day remember it with a smile. So, was this one of English football's most forgotten riots? For some Newcastle fans, the trouble began before they had even set foot on a coach. One supporter remembered arriving at the ticket office only to be told that all tickets had been sold. Then suddenly, tickets could somehow still be obtained if supporters joined the club's travel scheme and paid for transport they didn't even need. A group of angry fans marched over to the offices, confronted staff, and after a tense phone call, tickets mysteriously appeared. The supporter later joked that Newcastle had been shafting its fans for years and that this was nothing new. With tickets secured, it was time to head south. The coach was packed with a mixture of lads from work and lads from Kenton Way. Only around half of them actually had tickets. There were beers, cards, and stories on the journey. At one service station, there was a run-in with Borough fans heading to Wolverhampton. It stopped short of violence, but only just. Then came a stop at a sleepy village with a pub that had only just opened. The Newcastle supporters walked in just in time to help set up a barbecue. For a while, everything seemed friendly. Then local youths began to make comments. Tempers rose, and suddenly some of them found themselves being chased away by a few fleet-footed Geordies. It was an early sign of things to come. By the time Newcastle supporters reached Leicester, the city was buzzing. Leicester could still achieve promotion, and there was a party atmosphere hanging in the air. But there was also tension. In pubs across the city, there were stories of skirmishes, ambushes, and battle wounds already being displayed. One Newcastle fan remembered expecting the walk to Filbert Street to be particularly lively. In reality, there was mainly shouting, some abuse, and the odd bottle being launched. Nothing, however, prepared anyone for what would happen next. The match itself was a roller coaster. A delightful chip from Gavin Peacock put Newcastle ahead. Steve Walsh then equalised for Leicester. As the game moved into its closing stages, rumours swept around Filbert Street. This was before social media, before smartphones, before live updates on every result. Rumours were football's internet. Some people thought Leicester needed one more goal for promotion. Others believed Newcastle were heading down. Some thought a draw would relegate the Magpies. Nobody seemed entirely sure. Then came the moment that changed everything. Steve Walsh turned the ball into his own net. Newcastle led 2-1. The away end erupted. And then, almost immediately, chaos descended. Leicester supporters flooded onto the pitch. The players disappeared down the tunnel. The referee took everyone off the field. For many supporters, the game seemed to have simply ceased to exist. Was it finished? Would it restart? Had the referee blown the whistle already? Had the goal even counted? Nobody knew. One supporter later admitted that even years afterwards, when watching footage back, he still expected somebody to somehow clear the ball off the line. The uncertainty only fueled the madness. There were still perimeter fences inside English football grounds in those days, and these now became battle lines. According to multiple witnesses, Leicester supporters began throwing whatever they could find into the Newcastle section. Coins, plastic bottles, pieces of seats, debris. One supporter remembered missiles being thrown for around half an hour, while police appeared unable to restore order. Another simply summed up the entire day by saying, "The black eye I went home with about sums it up." For those in the East Stand, it was a frightening experience. One Leicester supporter, who had entered the ground through a custody entrance thanks to police friends, accidentally found himself among the away supporters. He remembered families with young children crying and begging to get out while coins and pieces of chairs flew through the air. He described it as the worst situation he had ever experienced at a football match. Another supporter was only 5 years old at the time, working under the stands with his father on one of the T-bars. He remembered shutting the hatch and hiding underneath the counter until the fighting finished. It frightened him so much that he didn't attend another match for years. Others remembered complete confusion. One supporter thought the game had ended 2-2. Another recalled not having a clue whether the match would restart. Another remembered riot police entering the pitch, only for supporters to notice that many of the officers appeared to be women, leading to laughter and renewed disorder. Then there was perhaps the most surreal image of the entire afternoon. One Newcastle supporter swore that while the away end was going completely mental, 3 nuns stood gently clapping. Can you imagine looking around in the middle of all that chaos and seeing 3 nuns calmly applauding? It sounds unbelievable, yet it is exactly the sort of detail that makes witness accounts so fascinating. Another supporter remembered a Newcastle fan standing in the centre circle before kick-off and seemingly inviting anybody who fancied their chances. Others remembered Geordies hammering on doors, looking for somewhere to hide. One supporter said the East Stand was manic, but also remembered something else: the noise. According to numerous Leicester fans, the Newcastle support never stopped singing. They sang throughout the entire game. Many Leicester supporters admitted that despite the trouble, they came away with enormous respect for the travelling Geordies. One fan simply said, "True fans, many of them." The violence continued outside. Newcastle supporters made their way back to coaches, while insults and missiles continued to fly. Some headed for Chesterfield, others ended up in Nottingham. One supporter recalled the city centre becoming an absolute riot. Another somehow ended up at a wedding reception. Another spent an hour with some nurses. Another remembered staggering back to the coach with a kebab in hand, only to find himself arrested. As he was handcuffed and bundled into a police van, his main concern, apparently, wasn't his liberty. It was his food. "My kebab! My kebab!" Moments later, his bus organiser was thrown into the van beside him. Then another mate appeared. He had apparently got himself arrested while trying to argue that his friend had done nothing wrong. Then another, and another. The supporter later thanked them all for their efforts while calling them daft idiots. Inside the cells, one of his friends spent the entire night rocking backwards and forwards saying, "Disaster. Effing disaster." Years later, they would both end up working together, having once shared a police cell after one of English football's most chaotic afternoons. Elsewhere, some Leicester fans were also spending nights in custody. One supporter received a £125 fine and a 6-month ban. Another got £300 and 6 months. Another was fined £375 and banned for 9 months. Others spoke of dawn raids, police arriving at 6 in the morning, front doors being kicked in. One supporter remembered officers searching his house, looking for a white shirt they believed he had been wearing during the disorder. The problem: he claimed he had actually been standing behind the man in the white shirt while wearing a jumper, the case was thrown out. Another supporter proudly declared that pleading not guilty was always the way to go. Several people ended up on the front pages of local newspapers. Some received nationwide bans, some walked away with criminal records, and some simply walked away with stories. Because what is perhaps most remarkable about May 2nd, 1992, is that despite everything, so many people remembered acts of friendship. A Leicester pub received an anniversary platter from Newcastle supporters the following season. Some Leicester fans ended up drinking with Geordies after the game and called them the best away supporters they had ever met. One supporter arranged to fight Newcastle fans at the station, only to end up becoming friends with them. Another remembered Newcastle supporters applauding Leicester fans back onto the buses the following year. And another simply said, "From that day I knew they lived for football, pie and beer." It is strange to think that one of the most chaotic afternoons of the early 1990s barely made the national news. One supporter arrived home, expecting news at 10 to lead with the story. Instead, it barely received a mention. Yet for those who were there, it was unforgettable. A final day that had everything. Promotion dreams, relegation fears, a last-minute own goal, a pitch invasion, missiles flying through the air, children hiding under counters, police cells, dawn raids, lost kebabs, 3 clapping nuns, and friendships formed between rival supporters. More than 30 years later, the events of Leicester against Newcastle on May 2nd, 1992, remain one of English football's most extraordinary and least remembered afternoons. But what do you think? Were you there that day? Do you remember the chaos at Filbert Street? And is this one of the most forgotten football riots in English history? Hope you all enjoyed the vid. This channel is all about sharing memories and stories about the good times. We have a community of football fans, and that's what this channel is all about. So, if you have any good away day stories that you would like to share, then you can find me on Facebook. Just type in everything casual and my page should pop up. Feel free to message me on there. And thank you, as always, for taking the time out of your lives to watch this video. If you are a fan of football casual culture and would like to see more, then click like and subscribe. That way you will be notified when we put a new video out, which is every week, plus it helps our channel grow. So a huge thank you and see you next time.